A floorboard creaked, and I opened my eyes to my bedroom, door moving inward, slow, like somebody tried to keep it quiet. I didn't sit up. I didn't breathe right. I stayed flat and watched the gap. A silhouette slid through. Not a ghost. A person. Heavy steps, controlled. They paused near my dresser, and I heard a soft scrape, drawer against wood. I kept my phone under the pillow and unlocked it without looking. My thumb hit the emergency call screen and hovered. I didn't press yet because I didn't want a ringtone. I just listened. The air in my room felt wrong, like it got heavier the second that door moved. I stared at the crack like it was a gun barrel. I kept my eyes half-lidded, so I looked asleep, but I watched everything. They moved to the dresser again. Another scrape, slower, like they were trying not to let the rails click. Then the small, wet sound of fingers sorting through stuff. Coins, hair ties, that stupid junk drawer mess. They walked into my bathroom. I heard the cabinet open. I heard my toothbrush cup clink. Then I heard them swallow water like they'd done it before. Like this was a stop on a route. My brain kept shouting that I should hit call, but my hand wouldn't do it. I pictured the screen lighting up brighter, the tiny beep, the dispatcher voice blasting out, and then hands on me. I stayed frozen and hated myself for it. They came back out and stood near my bed. I smelled sweat and cigarettes. They leaned close enough that the mattress dipped. The dip made my stomach drop. I could feel the pressure near my knees, like they were bracing on the frame. My body wanted to kick, scream, bite anything. I stayed still. I clenched my jaw so hard it hurt. I forced my breath to stay slow, but it kept catching in my throat. A finger brushed my hair. Light touch. Testing. It wasn't gentle. It was checking if I'd react. Then they backed off. The floor creaked again as they turned, and I tracked their steps out of my room, down the hall. I waited until I heard the front door latch. I didn't run after them. I didn't even move at first because my brain kept whispering that they might be standing outside my door listening for me to get up. When I finally moved, it felt like my joints were full of sand. I slid out of bed, kept low, and locked myself in the bathroom. I called 911 with shaking hands, holding the phone against my chest like it could stop my heart from jumping out. I whispered my address, then said it again louder because the dispatcher kept asking me to repeat it. I couldn't describe the person because I barely saw a shape, but I described the smell, the way they walked like they owned the place, the way they didn't rush. The wait for the cops felt like hours. I sat on the tile with the lights off, listening. Every pipe tick made me flinch. Every car outside made me think they were coming back. I kept one hand on the doorknob like I could hold it shut if someone tried. When the cops finally arrived, they walked through my house with flashlights and that bored confidence people get when it's not their fear. They checked windows and doors and found nothing forced. That made my stomach turn. That meant a key. They asked about roommates, exes, anyone with access. I kept saying no. They wrote it down anyway like my answer was just another box. They told me to change my locks, keep a light on, call again if I saw anything. Then they left me alone with my own house. As soon as the door shut behind them, the quiet turned sharp. I started hunting, not like a detective, like a trapped animal. I checked drawers, cabinets, closets, looking for any sign someone had been touching my life. At first it was nothing, then it was everything. My knife block sat on the counter with one slot empty, then replaced wrong. The big chef knife was in the narrow slot, jammed like whoever did it didn't care about the wood splitting. I didn't cook that day. I hadn't touched it. My hands went cold anyway. In the pantry, the cereal box was turned backward, not stolen, just flipped, like a little joke, like proof they had time. I opened the box and the bag inside was twisted tight, tighter than I ever twisted. It smelled faintly like smoke. In the bathroom, my towel on the rack was folded into a tight square. I don't fold towels. I dragged them off my body and hang them crooked. That towel looked staged, like someone wanted me to notice without leaving something obvious for cops to care about. I tried to tell myself I was spiraling, that I was inventing patterns. Then I found my spare key hook by the entryway empty. The hook was there. The key was not. I knew I hadn't moved it because I never move it. I stood there staring at that naked hook until my eyes burned. The next morning, I called my landlord and told him straight. Someone came in. There's no forced entry. I need the locks changed. He acted like it was inconvenient, like I was asking for new curtains. I didn't argue. I hung up and called a locksmith myself. 2 days later, the locksmith came. He pulled my lock cylinder and showed me the pins. Fresh marks like someone worked it with a copied key that didn't fit perfectly. He pointed to the tiny scratches and said it happens when a cut is close but sloppy, when someone keeps trying until it catches. That made it worse because it meant effort. It meant someone stood at my door at night, patient, working the key like a person cracking a safe, and then walked in and helped themselves to my drawers and my water and my air. I paid extra for a new deadbolt. I changed a knob lock too. I added a chain. I bought one of those cheap door alarms that screams if the door opens. I shoved a chair under the knob when I slept, like a child building a fort, except I wasn't playing. For a few nights, I didn't sleep at all. I laid there staring at the ceiling, phone in my hand, listening to the old house settle. Every normal sound turned into a threat. I kept seeing that finger in my hair. I kept smelling cigarettes that weren't there. 2 weeks after, I found a new scratch on the fresh deadbolt. A thin silver line like a nail tried to kiss it and slid off. It could have been anything. A key ring, a bag buckle, but my gut didn't buy it. I took a photo, then another the next day, comparing like a lunatic. On the third night after that, the cheap door alarm chirped once around 3 a.m., not the full scream, just the little pre-tone it makes when a magnet separates for a second. I sat up so fast my neck popped. The chair under the knob rattled. Then silence. No footsteps, no door opening, nothing. I stayed in bed for a minute, listening for breathing that wasn't mine. When I finally checked, the chain was still on, the door still shut, but the weather strip at the bottom was slightly out of place, like it had been nudged and pushed back. I didn't sleep after that. I sat with the kitchen light on until sunrise, staring at my keys on the table, counting them again, trying to convince myself numbers meant control. I called the non-emergency line and reported it. Another officer came later, looked at the lock, looked at me, and told me without saying it that there wasn't much to do unless someone got caught in the act. That's when it really hit me. The system treats a break-in like a problem after the damage, not while you're still sitting there waiting for the next try. I started timing my own routine, changing it, coming home at different hours, leaving a light on in a different room, like I was playing chess with someone I couldn't see. I stopped taking showers with music. I stopped sleeping on my back. I stopped feeling like my bedroom was mine. I kept telling myself the new locks meant safety, but safety didn't live in my body anymore. My body remembered the mattress dip, and it didn't care what hardware I bought. And the worst part is the house never stopped making noise. It's an old house. It creaks because it breathes, because wood shifts, because pipes knock. That's normal. But now every creak feels like the first one, the one that opened my eyes to the door moving inward. I changed the locks, added a chain, slept with a chair jammed under the knob. The creaks didn't stop being creaks. They turned into a countdown. My badge didn't scan and the security gates stayed shut. So I stood there swearing under my breath while cars piled up behind me. The guard waved me through manually like it was nothing. I walked in and found my badge on my desk, neatly placed, lanyard straight. I just stared at it like it was going to explain itself. I dumped my bag out anyway, checked my pockets, checked the car, checked under the desk like the damn thing could duplicate. I knew I'd clipped it on a home. I remember the little weight of it on my hip when I got out of the driver's seat. But here it was, sitting pretty like someone had taken the time to make it look intentional. If it was helpful, it was a weird kind of helpful. I kept working anyway. You do that when your brain wants normal more than it wants answers. I hit my lunch break, opened my car, and saw a zip tie looped around my driver's side handle. Not tightened, just waiting. I snapped it off, tossed it, checked the back seat, locked the doors, went back inside. My hands shook the whole walk back, and I hated myself for it. Zip ties aren't a joke to me. They're what you see in those stories where a woman disappears out of a parking lot, and everybody later says, "Wow, she should have paid attention. I kept telling myself it could have been some dumbass from maintenance dropping one and hooking it by accident, except it was looped clean and centered like a finger tapping my door. Next day, same thing. Different color. Then a sticky note under my wiper. You notice? That note hit harder than the plastic. The zip ties could have been random idiots. The note meant someone was close enough to lift my wiper, tuck paper, press it down, and do it without anyone stopping them. The period at the end pissed me off, like they were proud of their spelling. I took a photo, shoved it in my pocket, and went straight to HR because I wanted my complaint on record, even if it got treated like a fart in an elevator. HR did the soft voice routine. The woman nodded like I was explaining a dream. She asked if I had any interpersonal conflicts. She asked if I'd recently ended a relationship. She asked if I might be misreading intent. I told her there's no intent to misread when somebody's tagging my car. She suggested I stay aware and vary my routine, like she was reading off a self-defense pamphlet. I asked if they could pull camera footage. She said facilities handled that. I asked if facilities ever pulled footage for employees or if the cameras were just there to make the company feel better. She smiled like that was a bit too direct and said they'd look into it. Facilities shrugged. The guy they sent out walked the lot with me like it was a lighting inspection. He pointed at the camera pole and said the cameras were more for deterrence than identification. I said, deterrence clearly isn't working. He laughed once, like I made a joke, then looked annoyed when I didn't laugh with him. He told me to park closer to the building. I already was. He told me to call security if I saw anything. I asked what security would do besides wave me through a gate when my badge didn't scan. He gave me this look like I was trying to start a lawsuit for fun. The badge thing kept crawling around in my head too, so I went down to the gate after work and asked the guard if he remembered waving me through that morning. He didn't, or he pretended he didn't. He said the reader glitched, and he hit the button because cars were stacking up. I asked if he verified anything when the reader glitched. He pointed to my windshield sticker like it was holy. I asked if there was a log of manual openings. He said he didn't know and to talk to the security office. Security office was a locked door with a voicemail box that filled up fast. It felt like every path led to a shrug. After the note, I tried the police. Not 911, non-emergency. I sat in my car with the phone on speaker and felt ridiculous even as my throat kept going tight. The dispatcher asked if I'd been physically threatened. She asked if there was damage. I said no. That's the point, it's quiet. An officer showed up later in the lot, leaned against my window, and looked at the zip tie pieces in my cup holder like they were lint. He asked if I had an axe. He asked if I posted my location online. He said without a suspect or a direct threat. There wasn't much he could do besides take notes. He told me to document everything and stay with people. Then he handed me a card like he'd solved it. I drove home like I was trying to shake a tail. I took random turns. I changed lanes for no reason. I watched headlights behind me and felt my pulse jump every time one stayed with me through a light. When I got to my street, I didn't pull in right away. I did one extra loop because I couldn't stand the idea of someone following me to my driveway and learning where I slept. I didn't sleep in my bed. I slept on the couch with my phone in my hand because my bedroom window suddenly felt like a spotlight. At work the next day, people started treating it like gossip. A guy from another team made a joke about me having a secret admirer and asked where I park now. I told him to shut the fuck up, and he acted offended, like my fear was a party, and I just slammed the door on him. My manager pulled me aside and told me to keep it professional because what mattered to him was me staying pleasant while somebody tested me. Another woman pulled me aside later and said, quiet, that I should stop talking about it out loud because you never know who's listening. That made my mouth go dry because she wasn't wrong and she shouldn't have had to say it. So I started changing my habits. I started leaving with coworkers. I started switching entrances. The zip ties stopped. That scared me more than the zip ties because the zip ties were a message. They were a little poke that said, I can get close. When they stopped, it felt like the person had already gotten what they needed from watching me react. Like the practice rounds were over. I asked security for an escort once, just to see what they do. The guy at the front desk rolled his eyes and said they weren't police. I told him I wasn't asking him to tackle anybody. I was asking him to walk to a car. He said they were short-staffed and slid a pamphlet about personal safety across the counter like that fixed anything. I walked out with a receptionist who clearly didn't want to be attached to my problem. Halfway to the lot, she snapped that I was making her nervous. I snapped back that I was the one being marked, not her, and we walked the rest in silence. I started checking under my car. Every morning, palms on cold asphalt, heart thumping, and I stopped telling people because every shrug felt like permission. Friday night, I stayed late. Partly because of work, partly because my manager didn't like me leaving early, and I was too worn out to fight him again. The building emptied out, lights dimmed into that after-hours glow, and the place got too quiet. I heard the copier run while I was alone. I walked out and saw a guy by the supply room, hands in his pockets, wearing a contractor badge. He stared at me like I'd interrupted him. The badge was the cheap temporary kind, no photo, just a name in black letters, and it sat too straight on his chest like he clipped it on for show. I backed up. He moved fast, cut off the hall, and steered me toward the loading bay. No jilling, no naif, just his body and a calm face like he'd done this before. I tried to angle toward the main lobby, and he angled with me. I tried to double back, and he slid into my path without touching me, close enough that I could smell detergent on him, like he'd wash his clothes for this. My brain kept screaming, make noise, hit the alarm, but my mouth wouldn't work. It was like my body knew if I started screaming, it would turn into the kind of screaming that never stops. At the loading bay, the door was propped with a wedge. I kicked the door wedge out and slammed the bay door down. It bounced and trapped his hand for half a second. He jerked back, hissed, and swung his free arm at my head. I ducked, ran to my car, fumbled my keys, and felt him grab the back of my shirt. Fabrice Tola. I spun and drove my elbow in his throat. Not clean, just hard. He stumbled, coughed, and I got the driver door open. He shoved the door like he wanted me pinned. I drove the edge of it into his shin, and he screamed. Real pain, ugly sound. I jumped in and hit the lock button until it beeped like a fucking alarm. As I peeled out, I saw his van parked around the corner, rear doors cracked, something white inside. More zip ties, tape, a tarp folded like it was ready. Not a robbery. Not random. A plan. I borrowed his external hard drive because he always bragged about having extra storage, and I needed to move a video project fast. He tossed it at me like I was borrowing a phone charger. No warning. No, hey, don't open anything. Just that smug little grin like he was doing me a favor I'd owe him for later. I got home, kicked my shoes off, and plugged it in without thinking. It popped up with one folder named Work and another named Misc. I clicked Misc because I'm nosy and I figured it'd be memes. It wasn't memes. It was folders labeled with women's first names. Dozens, like a contact list turned into a shrine. I opened one and it hit me in layers. First, screenshots of social profiles, Instagram stories, Facebook pics, little location pins, comments he'd highlighted like homework. Then photos that weren't online at all, shots through windows, taken from outside at night, the glare of glass, and the angle that screams, I'm hiding behind a car. Cropped license plates, parking permits, a mailbox with an apartment number. I clicked back out, and my cursor hovered over the other names like my hand had a mind of its own. I opened another one and saw a different building, same kind of photos, same creeping angles. One folder had a picture of a woman carrying groceries into a door, and you could tell the shooter was right behind her, like 2 steps back. Another had a photo of a bedroom window from the sidewalk with the curtains half open. I caught my own reflection in my laptop screen, and it looked like a stranger watching a stranger. I told myself, maybe he's helping someone, maybe it's some sick true crime hobby, maybe I'm misreading it. Then I saw the audio files, named by date and time like surveillance. I clicked one. A woman laughed, close like the mic was in her pocket. A door opened, and then the sound of key turning. Right next to the microphone, not across a room, Not muffled. Like whoever recorded, it was close enough to breathe the same air. My hands went cold. I yanked the drive out like it burned. I sat there staring at the empty USB port like it had teeth. I should have stopped. I didn't. Panic makes you do stupid research. I plugged it back in and started tearing through folders like I could find an explanation hiding under the worst stuff. I didn't sleep. I sat at my kitchen table with a cup of coffee I never drank and scrolled until my eyes hurt. He tracked routines. He saved building layouts. He kept photos of lobby signs and stairwell doors and those little residents-only plaques you only notice when you're trying to get past them. He had screenshots of bus timetables. He had street view shots with arrows drawn on them. He had a PDF of a property listing with the bedroom window circled. He had a screenshot of a building's buzzer panel where someone had zoomed in and typed notes over the numbers like try 24 first. Some folders had little videos, shaky and short, like he filmed from his hip. A woman unlocking her car. A woman taking trash out. Another one stepping into an elevator, head down, and the camera follows just enough to catch the floor number lighting up. I kept pausing on tiny details, trying to convince myself I was wrong, and every detail made it worse. Then I found the spreadsheet. That's the part one can't shake because it was so clean. Columns like entry, alone, resists, with neat notes under each name. Back door sticks. Dog barks twice. Leaves at 6:52. No roommate this week. There were check marks. There were little next notes like he was planning rematches. One row had key copied in it. Just those two words like it was a grocery item. I recognized one face. A woman from work, different department, someone I nodded to at the coffee machine. In his folder, her name was misspelled, like she didn't even get the respect of accuracy. There was a photo of her car in our lot. There was a zoomed-in shot of her badge, clipped to her bag. My throat tightened, and I started sweating even though my apartment was cold. After that, I went hunting for anything that explained where he got all this. I saw a photo of a gym sign-in sheet. A screenshot of a rideshare app with a pickup pin blurred except for the street name. A file named Locks with close-up shots of deadbolts, different brands, different scratches, like he was comparing them. I tried searching his drive for my street, my building, anything. Nothing came up. That didn't relax me. It just told me I wasn't on the list yet, or I was on it under something I didn't know to search. I started thinking about every time he'd offered to walk someone to their car. Every time he'd volunteered to help with a ride. Every time he'd ask casual questions. Where do you park? What building are you in? You live alone? I'd watch people answer him. I'd answered him. I remembered him joking about how people don't lock shit anymore, like it was a harmless observation. The sun started coming up, and I hit that exhausted, furious state where you think confrontation equals control. I drove to his place at sunrise because anger makes you stupid. The whole ride I kept telling myself I'd just toss it back at him and say I know, and that would end it. Like a predator needs a stern talking to. I knocked hard. He opened the door in sweatpants, calm, eyes sharp like he'd already decided what I knew. I shoved the drive toward him. He didn't act confused. He didn't ask what I meant. He reached for it like it belonged to him. I stepped back. He grabbed my wrist and squeezed, hard enough to make my fingers tingle. His grip didn't slip. He leaned in, and the friendly mask was gone. He told me I'd ruin my own life if I tried to ruin his. He said it flat, like a promise. He didn't say please. He didn't say you're mistaken. He went straight to consequences like he'd run this scenario in his head 100 times. I told him to get the fuck off me, and he just held on harder for a second, like he was teaching me a lesson about what he could do whenever he felt like it. I snapped. I kneed his thigh, tore my arm free, and ran. I didn't wait to see if he chased. I hit the stairs, almost fell, and burst out into the parking lot shaking so bad I fumbled my keys. I got in my car, locked the doors, and threw the drive onto the passenger seat like a bomb. My wrist throbbed where his fingers had been, red half moons stamped into my skin. I sat there for a beat staring at his building, expecting his silhouette to appear in a window, watching me leave. I called the cops and tried to sound sane. The dispatcher asked a million questions that didn't fit what I was seeing. Was he outside? Did he have a weapon? Was I being threatened right now? I kept saying, he just grabbed me. He has files, he has names, he has recordings of keys, he's stalking women, and I could hear myself getting louder, desperate, like volume could make it real to someone who hadn't heard that key turn. She asked if I could just return the drive and avoid contact. I actually laughed, this ugly little sound, because that's what people always want. Avoid, de-escalate, don't make it messy, like I hadn't just watched a man catalog human beings. An officer met me and scrolled through my screenshots. At first he kept that neutral face, the one that says, okay, buddy, and then he hit the spreadsheet and his eyes flicked up to me fast. He asked me, real quiet, how long I'd had the drive. He asked if I copied anything. He asked if I'd touched the files. I said yes, because I'm not going to lie in the middle of this. And he gave me this look like I'd ruined a clean case by being human. That pissed me off so badly I almost walked out. They took the drive anyway. They told me not to touch anything else, not to talk about it, not to contact the women myself. I wanted to argue. I wanted to scream that I'd already touched it, I'd already seen it, I'd already walked into his doorway and felt his hand clamp down like a damn vice. Instead, I sat there and watched them tag it like evidence, and I hated how normal the process looked compared to what was inside. Hours crawled. I sat in my car outside the station because I couldn't stand the waiting room, and I kept watching the doors like he'd stroll in, smiling and wave. Every time my phone buzzed, I flinched. I kept imagining him back at his place, wiping drives, burning notebooks, calling lawyers, calling my boss. His threat kept replaying with that calm tone, like he was offering customer service. When they searched his apartment, they found a key copy kit. They found a bag of women's IDs. They found a little box of jewelry, tangled hair, cheap perfume samples, and a notebook with addresses written in careful handwriting like love letters. They found more lists, more dates, more little notes about doors and locks, and who lived alone. One of the officers told me, like it was an afterthought, that there were items from women who'd reported lost things, earrings, bracelets, stuff that disappears and you blame on your own messy life. The worst part wasn't the stuff. The worst part was how organized it all was. He didn't snap. He practiced.